Welcome to Live with Marketers, a talk show for marketers by marketers, where we bring together some of the brightest minds in the industry to talk shop. My name is Steve Kearns, and I lead social media on behalf of our advertising business here at LinkedIn. And today's episode is appropriately called Building a Brilliant Brand on Social. Before we get started, I wanted to highlight a couple of housekeeping details to keep in mind. First, if you're tuning in from Slido, we'll be sending out the full recording after the event, so don't worry about taking too many notes. To follow along on social media, search #LiveWithMarketers or follow the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions Showcase page on LinkedIn. And finally, please take time to fill out the brief survey at the end of the session to let us know what you thought of the content. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick right off. Today I have with me three incredible guests who I've worked with very closely in the past. They are some of the best and brightest industries, or best and brightest minds, in the social media universe. So with that, I will ask you each to introduce yourself and tell us one thing that is not on your LinkedIn profile. That's a LinkedIn tradition we have.
Cool. Hey everyone, my name is Ish. I'm a diversity specialist at Snapchat, and I actually used to work here at LinkedIn leading social for one of our business lines as well. One thing that is on my LinkedIn profile, but it used to not be, is I'm a DJ. So anything Latin, house, and hip hop related, that's kind of like my genre.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And hello, everyone. I am Allie Brewer-Hay, and I am on the corporate social team here at LinkedIn. One thing that is not on my LinkedIn profile, but as I was telling these guys a little bit ago, should add to my profile because it's been almost a year that we have a radio show. So every Saturday we kind of get together with, it's a family affair, and we showcase music, usually timed to a theme. We kind of try and put some guardrails around it, but share music and yeah, just kind of see what's new and also resurface some of the classics.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
That's so
super fun. Yeah.
And my name's Nick Martin. I'm the social engagement specialist at Hootsuite. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that my personal brand is Van City Beer Guy. So we're talking about marketing today, but if anybody ever wants to chat about beer as well, I'm always up for that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, those are a few of my favorite things for sure. You have your music and you have your beer. I always like to joke that what's not on my LinkedIn profile is not necessarily on there for a reason. But I'll say I used to be a classically trained singer, so sometimes you'll catch me singing in the shower, in the car, or humming along to music at work. So I sense like a very good musical vibe going on here.
Yeah.
So maybe like music equals good social media manager. That's a formula for success. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Awesome. So with that, I want to go ahead and dive right in. So one of the things I was thinking about as we were planning this episode was the question that we get asked a lot as social media managers. What is the value of social media? I think in kind of the contentious environment that we live in, you can kind of point fingers and say, hey, well, social media is a bunch of fluff, or it's a bunch of politics, or it's not something that could be terribly valuable from a business standpoint. Obviously, we all have a clear point of view that social is important because we would like to keep our jobs, but it's an incredible way to connect with folks, beyond the click, beyond just kind of the standard marketing messaging that you can have. So with that, I wanted to get your reaction to some of these stats that we've compiled. Some of them actually come from reports that are authored by Hootsuite. Yeah. But sort of, again, about the value of social media. The first being just this massively impressive number of 3.48 billion. That is the number of people that use social media around the world on, I would imagine, a very daily basis. And they're spending about 2.5 hours a day scrolling through social platforms. I know I get that notification from my phone that says, I spend, I think it's like 4.5 hours a day just kind of glued to my phone, which I don't know what that says about me and my
also your
habits.
Role, though.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I use it for my job. There you go. So. I'm not addicted. There you go, Mom. So, with that, I wanted to get your take on kind of the basis of social media as a business tool. As we can see here, 54% of people who are browsing social are actually using it to research products. Mm-hmm. And then you have 71% of people who are having positive experience with brands actually going in and recommending that to their friends or to their colleagues or their peers. So, I think what we're seeing here is this immense, value bubbling up of how we use social. So we'd love to get your perspective on, number one, do you agree? Do you disagree? And, general reactions.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely say I agree that there's some value to social.
There you go.
And the stat that stood out to me there was the 71% of people with a positive brand interaction, they go on to advocate on behalf of that brand and they tell their friends about it. And that's, for me, the value of social. It's going back to, okay, you had a great one-on-one interaction. It's building relationships with people, right? And then eventually they tell their friends, you get new customers, it all works out in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the stats that stood out to me the most, and in my opinion, the value of social is because the barrier of entry is like super, super low, like all you need is internet access and access to like a laptop or tablet or phone. You're able to reach such a huge audience that you probably wouldn't be able to reach on a daily basis or as quickly as you would be able to on other marketing channels. So I think that's super valuable.
Oh, it definitely is. And I think it's a great opportunity to also just really get that pulse check because, you know, you have that great opportunity to really listen to what your members or your customers and your audience what they're thinking and how they're reacting to not only the content that you're putting out, but also, you know, what are needs that they have that maybe aren't being met, and is there a way that you can satisfy that?
Right.
So, you know, it's a great opportunity to kind of learn and listen and see what you can do to help, you know, fill in the gaps.
See, I really like that point you called out, Ali, about learning and listening. You know, I think, you know, we were actually just having a chat about this, Nick, in the green room about how, you know, I think 5 or 10 years ago, social media used to be this massive megaphone where brands said, hey, look at me, look at how great I am, buy my stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, now it is that two-way conversation. It's that authentic communication between a brand and, you know, their users that is, you know, really helping drive those positive business outcomes, those positive interactions. And, you know, something that I really want to, again, I'm going to use this term a bunch. There's a ton of jargon, so please feel free to keep me honest. We were talking before the episode saying, you know, don't use so much marketing jargon, and here I am. But I want to double click into what we prepared for you, and it's actually called our checklist for social media success. So the question we set out to ask was, okay, you know, how do you actually think about communicating authentically as a brand? And, you know, how do you manifest that when you're a social media manager, someone running a branded social account? So with that, you know, and this is kind of what's going to guide our episode, is this idea of, you know, these different principles, which we'll go ahead and tease out. And, you know, we'll run through them quickly, and then we'll, again, double click into each. So, you know, the first is this idea of defining your brand's purpose. So, you know, we don't want, I think I wrote this last night in the blog post we'll share with you after this episode, but, you know, a brand without a purpose is kind of like a captain of a ship without a compass. So, you know, you need to make sure that before you even start your social media comms, you know, you're getting to the core of, you know, what your brand stands for. I know this is something that LinkedIn has done, you know, an interesting job of, a really fantastic job of, in the last couple of years, of finding that brand voice and finding that purpose.
Yeah, and it's been a really interesting journey too, because I think when we took some time a little while ago and kind of looked at not only how we were talking to our audience and our members, but thinking about it through the lens of being, you know, we're here along this journey with you. So the more that we can sort of show, hey, we get it, you know, this is all stuff that we can relate to, work, professional life, and all of the highs and lows that go along with that. So if we can tap into that and help people be more productive and successful through what we're through the content that we're sharing on social, then that's a win, because they feel like we're there to help, and they're going to come back for more, you know, which is great. And just being that human and having that relatable sort of tone has made such a big difference, and just choosing those topics.
It's funny that you said the metaphor of a captain without a compass, because I always call our brand's purpose our North Star.
Oh, there you go.
So
apparently we love navigation.
Who would have known?
Jargon too.
So it's at Hootsuite, our purpose is to champion the power of human connection. And I think teams within the company, within the organization, take that their own way. As a marketer, I'm always looking to make sure that our customers and other marketers are able to communicate as best as they can, right? And when it comes to, it's so useful having that North Star, that purpose, that compass, right? That it helps make your decisions that much easier.
I agree. You know, I think it's interesting because we think about, you know, so much of our work in social media is so instant. You know, it's so volume heavy that, you know, it's very easy to just go ahead and press send. But, you know, something we were talking about before the episode as we were kind of preparing was, you know, you don't necessarily want to always press send immediately. You want to take a step back and think, okay, what is this actually standing for? What am I saying? What am I hoping to say? What are my business goals? Which we will talk about in a second. But I think that brings us into sort of our next tip, which is developing a voice, tone, and point of view. So, going off of your brand social, even your personal social, it's really important to, not only think about, okay, what is my purpose as an organization, but then, how does what I'm saying actually map back into that? And I mean, Ish has an incredible following on his personal social accounts. I'm a massive fan, and every day in my LinkedIn feed, I'm seeing posts pop up from Ish, on topics from personal branding all the way to social media best practices. So I'd love to get your take on how you've developed your own point of view, be it when you were here at LinkedIn on behalf of your channels, or for your own personal brand.
Of course. One thing that I try to guide all of my content on social is it informative or does it drive some type of humor? 90% of the content that I do share it's going to be helpful in some way. So it's super informative. And I think when you're delivering some type of value through your social channels, it comes across as authentic.
Right.
And people on the receiving end can see the value that you're trying to share with them. I'm very true to myself in terms of I don't think I'm the funniest guy, so I don't try to be the clown
disagree. I would
on
disagree.
social. But I think where I find the most interest is just data, metrics, what are things.
Yeah.
How can I summarize a blog post in 5 key points and share it out with the network that's going to reshare it over and over and over?
Right. Yeah, one of the things I go back to one-on-ones with my boss, and one of the things when I was first starting out here at LinkedIn that she would always encourage me to think about when we were thinking about voice, tone, and point of view is this idea of kind of a thumb stopper.
Yep.
If you put yourself in the shoes of a consumer, of a social media user, what's actually going to encourage them to take the next action? That's what we all want as social media managers, right?
Yeah.
Is to have someone take that next action, have a deeper interaction with our brand, and that. A lot of times, all that takes is for you to take off your marketer cap and put on your consumer cap and say, okay, what would I actually click on, or what would I actually find valuable?
Totally. And understanding who your audience is, right? So taking the time to create customer personas and have that almost visual of this is who I'm talking to right now. So then you can curate what your voice is. You can curate the content you're sharing to them. You can really align what you're doing towards that target persona.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think, one of the things that kind of brings us into our next tip, and again, we'll provide practical examples of all of these, so it will not be just theoretical, I promise. But, one of the things we like to harp on as well is that you need to post often. Obviously, we're a social media company telling you to post often, so, have to call that out to begin with. But, we found that, posting at least once a day allows you to actually grow an audience that is going to start anticipating your content. Yeah. I know it's a massive lift. It's hard, especially as you manage multiple social accounts. I remember when I first joined, I had I think 15 social platforms that I was kind of, playing whack-a-mole with. But, as we've started to get a more regular posting cadence there, if you build it, they will come. Yeah. And, people have been coming to us in droves. So that's a really positive thing.
For sure.
Yeah. And there are tools like Hootsuite, for example, that help you schedule them.
Yep.
So if you are trying to post a couple of times a day over the next couple of weeks, you can use scheduling tools, and then also keeping track of what are your highest points of engagement, so that you can try to work around those times as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You definitely want to make sure that when you're talking about content, that we don't want to forget about having a content calendar. So having that go-to document, however you have it set up, where every Monday I know this is going out, Tuesday here's at this time, so you can schedule it for the future if you're using Hootsuite or whatever tool you're using. Right. But having that content calendar to make sure that you have a good content mix as well, right? Making sure that you're not necessarily sharing the same article over and over and over again, and your audience gets kind of content fatigue from that. You want to make sure that you're changing things up a little bit.
Yeah. And no holes. I mean, sometimes it takes that plotting to kind of look and see, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. We may have a couple of days where there's one day that maybe is really light. Is there, can we swap things around, or is there also maybe something happening that we can tap into that's, happening in, kind of a trend or something that's happening online that we could, find a way to insert ourselves into the conversation.
And your audience analytics will tell you that too. You make sure that that's one thing I always tell people is go into your audience analytics, so that you can your audience will tell you what they like when they're online, what they're engaging with, what your most engaged posts are, what's converting, whatever, right? What copy's doing well. So then you can start to continue to evolve what's going on with your content strategy to optimize for what works.
I love that. You know, and I think Ali and Nick, you both teed it up perfectly with kind of this idea of plugging into calendar moments, holidays, whatnot. That's actually one of the most challenging aspects of social media that I found in my day-to-day role is, you know, considering when to post and when not to. You know, we'll have, you know, a much more in-depth discussion as the episode continues, but, you know, where do you lean in and where do you stay silent? You know, it's a really tricky question to answer because, you know, so many brands are getting it right, but then so many brands are also getting it wrong. And, you know, as a social manager, I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, oh, shoot, like, what happens if I send a tweet that's a little, you know, or a LinkedIn post that's a little off color and, you know, it doesn't hit right and then we have a firestorm?
Right.
It's tricky.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's what kind of goes back to that, what your brand mission is. And when you set that up, when those opportunities do come up, you have to look through that lens of, is there a way for us as the brand to have an authentic role in this conversation? So if it's World Selfie Day or National Selfie Day, or, you know, whatever the case may be, you know, would that be something that just on a whim we would participate in? If we can map it back to a professional context that, you know, if you upload a, you know, photo to your profile on LinkedIn, you're X times more likely to get, you know, noticed by a recruiter, for example, then World Selfie Day becomes very applicable for us to talk about as a brand. So it's just kind of using that lens, I think.
Totally. One thing I always like to say is, especially when it comes to like these gut check moments of like, do I want to be engaging here?
And they come up often. I mean, there's so much stuff on the internet that like...
all the time. Is I ask myself the question, am I improving on the silence, right? Am I going to be benefiting my brand by jumping in on this conversation, whatever it may be? Or am I putting my brand at risk by sharing whatever the post is? I don't know, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, you know, finally, how we'll bring it home is kind of the you know, maybe not always the sexiest topic to talk about, but, you know, metrics and business objectives. You know, I think one of the things that we tend to get chided about as social media managers beyond, okay, well, why do you exist, is, you know, number two, how are you actually impacting the business? You know, it's very easy to write off someone who works in social and say, yeah, they take pictures and you know, post on social for a living and are making memes and whatnot. But really, there's kind of a secret sauce in being able to take that really engaging sort of emotive medium and then translate that into the goals and metrics that your business cares about. So we'll definitely talk about that, some of the things you can map back to based on, you know, the objectives that your organization is working through. So with that, I'd love to actually dive in. And, you know, before this episode, we went ahead and we had a, you know, speaker prep call and whatnot, where we asked, you know, hey, let's actually get some practical examples of, you know, brands we admire on social, brands that are absolutely crushing it. And we'll go post by post and we'll, you know, talk about some of those examples. So I'd love to kind of reference that to begin with, you know, some of the brands that are winning at you know, point of view, voice, tone, and we can talk about what worked and what didn't. So, you know, the first one I want to call out, and I think this goes without saying, is Wendy's. So, you know, Wendy's is the absolute envy of, like, I think every social media manager, every social media conference, every social media universe. They are the kings and queens of it. They have a brilliant voice and tone that I'm just like, how did you think of that?
I know.
It's fantastic, and would love to get your thoughts first on, and I can explain the context behind this specific post in a second, but if you guys have any thoughts on Wendy's.
I think that they're so out there, and like you said, I don't know who thought of it, like their whole social brand, voice, and tone, but because it's so out there and it's because it's so eye-catching, it's kind of become the norm for people that follow Wendy's online. They're almost excited to it, so excited to check out their content. It's not so much about the food that they have and they serve, but they really did a good job of leveraging social just to attract more attention towards Wendy's in a really humorous way.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I would say the Moon Pie, which is directly below that, they actually have had quite a bit of back and forth, those two brands in particular. And I think that's the other piece that is really kind of cool and clever about Wendy's is the fact that they're doing it, for all to enjoy, but there's also a lot of brand integration in there. There's a lot of brands that get involved in sort of the back and forth, and it's it's all kind of fun, and it's just driving that conversation. So
yeah, Wendy's, of the three that we're looking at here, but talking about Wendy's, it's like they looked at who their audience was, and they're like, I'm gonna tweet with them or I'm gonna engage with them on social media in a way that our customers they're talking to each other. We want to be a friend of theirs, right? Or we want to have that sassy clap back, or that sassy response that's going to blow up right now, And I think it's so funny, and I find it really interesting because all of a sudden enterprise companies were like, should we be sassy on social media?
Yeah,
that's very true.
Like, everyone's having meetings now. Should we be like Wendy's?
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's a fantastic point you raised, Nick, too, because it goes back to voice and tone and, mapping that back to your brand mission. And we were actually just talking about this, myself and Allie, as kind of the stewards of the, B2B and business to consumer sides of the brand here at LinkedIn, that, we're not necessarily a snarky brand. We don't clap back. We have a persona that's called the trusted teammate, which, we actually realized as we're developing our brand voice and tone that it was kind of a manifestation of like who a LinkedIn employee is at work, which is a beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But, I'd love to hear from you, Allie, and Ish, you've worked at LinkedIn before, so I'd love for you to hop in as well. We don't let them go very far here. We always bring them back. So, how did we, go about, I'm sure there are moments when we want to kind of clap back and be snarky. How do you think about that as someone who's sort of the steward of this brand?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is one that, things come up, and, Netflix is an example that comes to mind as of late with a conversation that they started on Twitter, and many, many brands jumped in with some very clever responses. But, there are going to be times where you can take risk to a point, but I think to a point that Nick made earlier, you do get into a territory where if you feel like it's going to put your brand at risk, just for the sake of participating in the conversation, that's where we have those conversations internally and say, you know what, this is great, this is clever, but does LinkedIn really have a seat at the table here? Probably not. Will it feel forced or inauthentic? If that's the case, then you know what? You watch it, you enjoy it, and then you look for another opportunity where maybe there is a way that we can be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I think also, so the business unit that I supported when I was here at LinkedIn was mainly towards people in the talent space, so recruiters, HR managers, diversity program managers, all of that. And one thing that was really important for me in my role was 100% understanding the audience, what they find to be funny, what they find to be informative, how they speak, the lingo, and understanding, are you crossing any barriers or are you offending anybody with a tweet or with a post? We didn't do too much clapping back, but I think figuring out what they find was humorous and how to speak with them was really important in terms of developing my content strategy.
Yeah. No, that's a great call out. I mean, I think back to a practical example of when we were at South by Southwest last year, and we had this strategy where we created a custom hashtag. Hashtag LISXSW. You will see it back again this year.
Just a few months away.
Right? I know. I'm gearing up right now. I'm very excited. But one of the things we decided to do, because we had sort of this open community space that we wanted to invite people into and use social as a mechanism to drive traffic back there, we inserted ourselves in the conversation when people were talking about South by Southwest on social. So, we ran, I think it was an intelligent risk because it can be a little creepy sometimes if you have a brand kind of coming in and saying, you're having, a conversation in the feed on LinkedIn or on Twitter about, an event, and, we're kind of jumping in and suggesting, hey, why don't you actually have that networking meetup here in our space?
Yeah.
But, it kind of went back to the idea of the value add. We were offering something to them. We were saying, hey, you're actually able to go in, to be welcomed in. You can have free food, drinks, meet real LinkedIn employees, get a new LinkedIn headshot. So the value add was there for, the LinkedIn member, the social media user. And that was kind of the connection point with our brand. So we found that people really, got a kick out of that. And they were like, wait a minute, they're actually listening to me? And there's someone on the other end of this social account that, cares about my opinion of this brand. So, it was a really cool exercise for us.
I think the key point was it was an intelligent risk. It was something that tied back to the brand, and it wasn't just like super random. We wanted to like to talk to these
Yeah.
people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about the Wendy's social post, for example, is this idea of if we go back to the brand moments and where do you plug your brand in? So they have a burger called the Dave Single, which Wendy's, for those of you maybe not familiar who are tuning in from around the world, is a burger chain that is really famous for square hamburgers. So they make the meat, and it's like kind of a square patty, and that's been sort of their claim to fame for years. And one of those burgers is the Dave Single. Now, recently, I think it was Emma Watson came out on television. I think she's Hermione Granger from Harry Potter, correct?
Yep.
If I'm getting all these references right, like I'm gonna give myself a prize later. But she came out the other day. She is single, and it just had passed her 30th birthday or something, and said that she prefers to not think of herself as single, rather self-partnered. So sort of there was the connection point that Wendy's hopped on immediately. As kind of a chronic single person, my mind went like, woo, yay! So that's why it made it now onto my marketing presentation.
I love it.
Cheers. But I think the net is that they really found that connective tissue that they were able to then, to your point, Ish, make that intelligent risk. And really drive those positive outcomes.
Yeah.
Another thing too is the timeliness of it, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely it's one thing to have this brand voice where you're whatever it is. In this case, a little sassy or a little some attitude, but it wouldn't have worked if they sent it now, a month and a half later, right? It's like okay, that's past.
Yeah,
Social media moves really fast,
Yeah.
so when you are working on doing anything like this, you have to make sure that it's timely and that the moment hasn't passed, right? We look at Ryan Reynolds and his aviation gin ad that just came out,
so
right?
good.
That was so good and had all the marketers buzzing. And I think that's going to be like a case study for the next while because it was performed so quickly and they had that such quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Right?
How do you keep a finger on the pulse of some of the top news and stories? I mean, I think that's kind of a trademark of a social manager as well, as someone who I don't necessarily need to say, I don't think woke is the right word for it, but just like informed and kind of an avid consumer of media to be able to hop on these opportunities and have the right way to approach it. So are there any sort of tips you could give there as to how to stay up to date?
Well, so I mean, I can hop on my tip, I guess, but we talked about it right off the beginning, we have 4 hours of screen time. I'm online a lot.
It's like,
I'm soaking all of this in, sponging it all in. I'm looking at what's trending. I'm talking to other people too. Like I'm going to be talking to you afterwards, right? Let's say what's happening. What do you see that's working? I'm in different Facebook groups too, because I want to make sure that I'm going to be good at my job. And I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to these things so that when an opportunity does come around, that we can hop on it or at least weigh the option of whether we should or not.
Yeah, it's almost like you're doing user research all the time.
Yeah.
So like whenever you're on it, I mean, maybe you're on your personal Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, but you're doing it with an eye of social, like, whoa, that's kind of a different content format. That would work really well if I did it with my business objective or whatever. I think another tip, and it's like super easy, anybody can do it, is just actively using Twitter on a daily basis. And then seeing what's trending on there because like they mentioned, Twitter's where news breaks, right? So just keeping a good pulse on like what are people talking about, how are they talking to each other, what are the trending hashtags. I think that's
no, that's fantastic. And one of the things I think you touched on perfectly, Ish, is kind of this idea of objective of goal. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about our program here at Live with Marketers is that it's actually relatively platform agnostic. So we ourselves are on LinkedIn primarily, obviously, but we also see the value in in Twitter, in Instagram, Facebook, all of the social platforms that kind of build out that let's call it cornucopia of content that you're using to reach your audiences. Different people, different age demographics, different buyers are on different platforms. So it's important that we as kind of the professionals in the space are keeping that in mind.
Definitely.
So with that, I want to double click again. There should be a game for this, tally up the number of times I say double click. But some of the objectives that you can consider when drafting a branded social media post. I've gone ahead and called out a few. The first being brand awareness. Engagement is another one. Conversion is another one. Obviously very prominent in the B2B space. But I'd love to get your take on some of the objectives that you've used in your day-to-day role, how that helps inform what content you publish, what you're looking for, what you're looking to optimize toward. Because you want to, as Ali said earlier, start with your objectives, start with your brand's purpose before you actually press send. So, would love to get some thoughts on that.
I think one that a lot of brands and companies may not even consider is like brand perception. So doing like active research and seeing what your audience is talking about. So anybody can do it. You go on Twitter or go on LinkedIn and type in your company name and spending 20 minutes just scrolling through and seeing what people are actively saying. Is it positive? Is it negative? And are you able to influence the negative to turn positive?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think one of the things that we tend to think about too is, the different objectives that you're identifying will, result in different outcomes.
Yeah.
So, for example, with brand awareness, a lot of times that's where you're going to be leaning into things like paid media.
Yeah.
You're going to be thinking, how do I actually expose my content to the greatest volume of people possible? Which is very different than, let's say, an engagement play, which is, okay, I may only care that 100 people see this, but I want a very large percentage of those 100 people to say, hey, this is funny, I enjoyed this, like, subscribe, whatever your metric of success is. And then finally with conversion, obviously this is pretty cut and dry, but you want to see people actually kind of engaging with your brand, deepening your relationship with the brand, and, ultimately ending up a customer. So, I think it's something to be said that you should really keep engagement, brand awareness, and conversion in mind as you're, again, before pressing send.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, with that, I want to go ahead and move on to the big question of, when to engage. This is something that we're faced with as social media managers every single day. And we see a lot of stuff going really well, a lot of stuff that doesn't go so well. And I want to focus today on the positive examples. I think all of us know, especially if you're in the social media space, of some of the branded social posts gone wrong. But, it's an interesting question that we're posed with every single day of, when do you take a stand as a brand? And when do you just stay quiet and let the silence be a statement in itself?
Yeah.
So would love to get your thoughts on how you've done that in your day-to-day roles. Any unique examples you've come across, and then we can also talk through some of the examples we've provided on the screen.
For sure.
The panel.
Yeah. Some of the things that I look at, again, we started talking about it earlier, is, are we improving on the silence? So always start with that. That's the first question everybody should ask. Like, do I need to jump in on this? Is there value here? Is my audience going to appreciate it? Am I going to reach new people potentially? Like, weigh all of these options before you hit send. And then also make sure that your copy has to be just right too. It's a big risk when you jump in on any risky post or something that has the potential to go one way or the other. But good examples, I guess, that we've seen. I really like what we were talking about it earlier. I really like what the complete tone shift from the government of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. If you look at their Twitter handle, I feel like it's only in the last few weeks, has taken a complete shift, and it's got a lot more attitude, a lot more personality, and it's working.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing that I see, is that people are talking about it. It's a government brand, and I don't think I would have been sitting here talking about the state of New Jersey if they didn't have,
Otherwise.
if they didn't have
No
this
disrespect to people from New Jersey, but
yeah,
Of course.
but they have such a funny conversations now
Yeah.
online, and I think that it's resonating with people, and I think that they're measuring what's happening too, right? They're seeing, is this working? Is it not? Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, similar to what you had pointed out, I think we definitely look at, we want to put out content that is valuable. So, at the end of the day, we want people to find a job, achieve their success, whatever that may be, and be a part of that conversation, ideally on LinkedIn. But, we use that lens of, okay, is this something that, again, maps back to what our messaging is and what our mission is, but is it something that is also going to help them? So, and if there's a way to connect that, and if it is a topic that's maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say controversial, but if it makes sense, if it ties back to, we are a platform and we stand behind creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce.
Right.
So if it can tie into that, then maybe there is a place for us to have a say. And it's just kind of going through that checklist to do that. One of the examples that I thought and I have thought does a really good job, and it's not so much that it's ever anything super edgy, but I just love how Spotify has taken data that they have, created something that's super personal to you and your listening habits.
Which is a big risk.
It
because
is.
personalization can be creepy.
Yeah,
It can.
that's true.
And package it at this end of year, end of decade wrap, and
I
give
love
you
it.
your your top your top songs, your top genres. It's obviously something as we get to the end of the year, it's timely. We're all thinking about, okay, what have I done this year? What have I achieved? What
Right.
am I going to achieve or want to achieve next year? So it taps into that, and it's also socially shareable.
Yeah.
So
Everyone was sharing in their feeds, oh, I got this, and I can't believe Lizzo didn't make the list, or whatever the case may be. But then they take it a step further with their out of home and billboards and tapping into places and putting up to the person who said who listened to I'm Sorry 46 times this year.
Yeah, are you okay?
Did they accept your apology? So it's just it's taking that whole life cycle of it and just being really thoughtful, and I think it's just I think it's a great strategy.
And the actual pieces of content
Yeah.
was so shareable. Like it
Yeah.
was so easy to transfer over
it's
to
so good.
Instagram
Yeah.
stories,
Yeah.
right? It was just one click and there you
Yeah.
go.
Right.
Yep.
I think, like you mentioned, Ali, is that was very, very on brand for them. It's like
Yeah.
that's their world.
Yeah.
I think where it wouldn't work as well as if it's too far of a stretch.
True.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like music, they have the data on our music habits and
Yeah.
the songs that we listen to, so it kind of made sense.
Mhm.
And they just did it, executed perfectly.
Totally.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think the key here is context always matters, and
Yeah.
that's why I always tend to look to a we've even had situations this week where Ali is one of my trusted advisors as we think about, do we engage with something, do we not, do we kind of refrain or hold back and see how things shake out. I always recommend sort of having a team of trusted advisors who can gut check things with you. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you're feeling extra snarky today, but if you like your job, maybe you don't actually want to press send just yet.
Yeah.
You actually
so-
just need to eat something.
Exactly. Eat
Yeah.
something, maybe sleep.
Pause. Yep.
Take a breather, do some yoga type stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things I want to continue to harp on is that always consider the context. Have a group of trusted advisors. Two of the campaigns I think that have done this so beautifully, especially as you get into that really like kind of contentious political realm.
Yeah.
Any of the social issues that are going to like light half of the universe on fire
Yeah.
when you decide to take a stand. Ones that I want to call out are Airbnb and then Nike with the Colin Kaepernick ad. They both are both tying back into their brand. Nike obviously is using an athlete who's very well respected, very storied athlete. Airbnb is wanting to embrace this idea of being a welcoming brand for all people.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think to the conversations that must have gone on in those boardrooms
Oh yeah.
around, hey, if we stick our neck out, and specifically with the Nike example, it didn't go so well at the beginning. It was only after a while that it really started to gain momentum, and they actually saw a measurable increase in their, I think it was their share value, or it was their ad recall or some kind of metric like that, that showed that they were, making a positive impact. So it's really interesting to see when brands take a stand, but you have to kind of be very selective about doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And having understanding that your brand's core values, you make sure that they align with your customers' core values, and then aligning it that way. So okay, yes, this campaign makes sense as an example. Yeah.
It's fantastic. So with that, I actually want to go ahead and turn the mic over to Ali. On sort of our next visual aid, we've compiled a number of different post examples from how LinkedIn actually does this in the market on a day-to-day basis. I think, recently we've kind of had this new charter here at LinkedIn of how we communicate as a brand, again, embracing what we call the trusted teammate voice and tone, which has manifested in some really brilliant examples of social. Ali sitting here is sort of the day-to-day voice of LinkedIn. You have her right here. So
I'm one, yes.
ask us anything.
Our mighty team, who I'm
So
sure will watch
would love
later.
for you to walk us through some of the examples of when we've engaged in holidays or moments and how that turned out.
Totally. So I think one of the things that we really wanted to pay attention to is obviously, being really thoughtful about our voice and tone, but also thinking about each channel. So being thoughtful about how we use our voice on each channel that we're on, because how people consume and interact on Twitter, to the point Ish made earlier, it's fast. That's where news breaks. So you need to hop on those more trending pieces of information that are, hot and in the cultural zeitgeist, versus something on LinkedIn where you can be a little bit more, not verbose, but you can go into more detail and you can provide that. It makes sense because of you're on LinkedIn, and that's that
and it's
professional
professional
element.
minded too, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we've tried to create content that really is specific to the channel. So it may map across, and we may execute it a little bit differently. On one channel, it could be text only. On the other, it could be, an actual meeting room bingo. But again, playing into things that everyone may face with, from a day-to-day, things that, from, the coffee pot and somebody didn't refill it, and, like the woes of that kind of scenario.
Right.
So creating stuff, and like the meeting room bingo, for example, was another one that was a way for us to kind of have that two-way conversation with our members.
Yeah.
The idea of them participating, getting a giggle hopefully out of it, taking a pause, and sharing back. And so that was really fun to see. Highlighting real-time opportunities, and this was from Lady Gaga from her from the Oscars when she won, and just watching for that moment that makes sense, and it felt right for us to highlight, because it really is. It's all about your work and your career and your trajectory, and celebrating those moments. So it felt very appropriate given the time and the context for us to share that. The Mother's Day was one that, again, we wanted to ask our members, you got to admit it, mom's usually right. And what was the best piece of career advice? So not only did we get some really cool, tidbits of advice, we got some really heartwarming stories as well, but it also gave us an opportunity to collect those and then showcase them. So we actually used that content from our members and put that back. So our actual Mother's Day post was highlighting all of the great tips and advice that moms from our members and customers had received. So it was kind of, it was a conversation that we had with them in that sense, and we were able to give that back to them in a way. Yeah. So it was great, and they performed really well, which is also fun to see, because with these we're trying to, obviously create that interaction and break down that, that barrier, what could be construed as not being as human or relatable, because that's what we want to get to and what we're trying to achieve. So, carving out the times and the moments to be able to do that in, light and professionally relevant, but also in a little dose of humor here and there also helps. Yeah. So it was really great. And, you saw that in the comments with each other and also back to us. So
what I love about the Mother's Day campaign there is that you took one piece of content, right? Yeah. Give us some advice here. What was your mom's thing? And then you made it last, right? You helped fill your calendar. Yeah. Right? With something that people, it already has resonated, because you can see that it has all these comments. Yeah. But now you're just sharing it back to everybody, and your audience will feel heard as well, right?
Absolutely.
When you're saying that.
No, it's totally true. And one thing too, and I was trying to get some examples from some of our teams in other regions as well, because we're trying to share and leverage where we can. Sure. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are different events and things that happen maybe, here in the U.S. that don't make as much, sense in, say, the UK, for example. But there are a lot of opportunities where we can all align. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're trying to, make sure that we're creating content that can also help serve our partners, and just, having those conversations to say, all right, well, maybe you're talking about tea over there, but we can adapt that to coffee here, and that's a win-win. So it's another opportunity to kind of,
And talking too about relationship building, think about how exciting, or how excited the moms would have been to see, like, whoa, LinkedIn shared, my advice. I told you I was right.
Yeah. There's probably a few of those.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I know my mom would have been so excited.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with social too, the interesting thing is we're asking folks to actually go in and take an action. There's a whole sort of, like, I'd call it counter movement against social media managers like us to be, it's this whole idea of, like, silence brand, like, shut up, like, we don't want to hear you in the conversation. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's these examples that are really starting to bring to the light, what we can actually do with some of the content people are providing with us. If people are taking the time out of their day, which, they could be doing a multitude of other things, to say, hey, LinkedIn or Hootsuite, I'm going to share this information with you.
Yeah.
It behooves us to actually acknowledge it,
Yes.
do something with it in a way that's not creepy.
Yeah.
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 In a way that will then again enhance the whole idea of community. Like that
Yeah.
was what social media
Yeah.
was designed to do, right? It was designed
Mhm.
to connect people and build connective tissue, not to tear people down.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to think about that. Ish,
Totally.
I'd love to understand, you've built this massive following on LinkedIn. You have like 30,000 followers on LinkedIn,
I
right?
don't know. It's kind of-
It's whatever it is, it's impressive.
Super
How do you
impressive.
think about community management and those two-way conversations? Because you share a lot of content, and give me your thoughts on that, if you could.
I think in terms of community management, I think this is kind of relatable to the people that are maybe on the stream watching. Is how do you use your social channels to find the conversations that are already happening about the topics that you want to talk about, or the topics that you feel like you have a little bit to add? So some of the topics that I'm super passionate about: diversity, inclusion, social media marketing, entrepreneurship, business. So what I try to do is not become a thought leader in the space, but just insert myself into conversations that are already happening, and then just learning from others, and then engaging with them and joining groups like Nick mentioned.
Yeah.
LinkedIn groups, we're part of a ton of them as well. And then little by little, people start to respect you a little bit more, because maybe you're not shoving content down their throats, but you're becoming a part of the community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's that idea of sort of building trust and credibility that is so critical to everything that we do.
Yeah.
I think there's some quote that I'm going to butcher, but it's like, trust can be, trust takes years to earn and minutes to lose, or seconds to lose.
Yeah, it's true.
And we're kind of on the, not to like make us seem so valiant, but, we're kind of on the front lines of that every day on behalf of brands. So, we have very senior stakeholders entrusting us with, say, hey, here's this really valuable company that we've built and has, in LinkedIn's case, 16,000 employees. Here's your megaphone.
Yeah.
So, it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes, but I think that's kind of a great, point to keep in mind of, how are we adding value back into the community? How are we helping connect others with the content we're providing? So thank you so much for sharing that. That's super helpful. So, with that, I'm mindful that I want to leave some time for Q&A. So you all have provided us with some really stellar questions that I'm going to go ahead and pose to our very, very intelligent panelists here. So, the first would be more specific to the B2B space. So I know, a lot of the, I'd say, like, most notable examples of brilliant social can tend to be in the B2C space. But from a B2B standpoint, what are some of the, and Ish, you've worked in B2B, Nick, I know Hootsuite's a B2B company. What KPIs could you recommend, or things that you could look for if, maybe you're not necessarily driving toward like engagement, brand awareness, but you're actually trying to drive toward conversions? What are some of those muscles you'd flex?
Well, I'm always looking for leads, like how can we fill the pipeline, right? So content downloads, registrations. So if anybody registered to watch this, that would be something that I would be looking at. Or somebody went and downloaded our trends report, which is coming out or has come out, right? Those are the things that I'm looking at. So then we can put them into the customer journey and kind of add them in and make sure that we have different touch points to make sure that they can direct them towards maybe they want to purchase at some point, or maybe they want to recommend Hootsuite at some point, or things like that.
I think something that I think my old manager mentioned it to me, or a marketing mentor mentioned it to me. Even though you're in the B2B space, you're still speaking to people, and people are the decision makers at these different companies. They're the ones that are signing the checks. They're the ones that are making have the most influence within their companies. So keeping that very, very top of mind when you're developing copy, when you're developing your the metrics that you want to go after, and these marketing campaigns will definitely help, because we're all people at the end of the day. We all have emotions, and we all are motivated by different things.
Yeah, I think that's a really brilliant call out, Ish, and one that we've actually done. I believe we've done some research behind it, or I've seen research out in the market about this, where they actually say that B2B buying decisions are far more emotional than consumer purchases, because guess what? Your job is dependent on it.
Yeah.
If your boss comes to you and says, hey, here's $1 million or $100,000 or $10, whatever your budget may be, go find a software, implement it, make it work.
Yeah. There's a lot riding on it.
Screw up.
Yeah, there's a pressure there.
Yeah, for sure.
You might not have a job anymore. Hopefully your company has more compassion than that, but it's a potential scenario. So, I love the point of communicating authentically and using that human voice and tone. I think we tend to make the mistake of saying, okay, and LinkedIn has made this mistake in the past quite candidly of, we're someone in a suit and we only communicate about business things. So nobody wants to hear that. People want to just be spoken to like people.
Yep.
So, with that, how would you go ahead and combat fatigue on social media? I think there's some, when we're sending out multiple posts a day, sometimes it's hard to kind of keep people's attention, keep people coming back. Do you have sort of a recommendation or a top tip as to how to break through the noise and, get through to people who may be seeing, let's call it I think it's something like 10,000 marketing messages a day?
Hard for sure, but I think, immediately what comes to mind is obviously if you can vary your content. If you're doing, just one type, there's so many different, and it's continuing to evolve how many options we have in terms of different ads and ad products that we can be using to share our content. So I think making sure that you're giving an interesting mix. So, whether it's video and static, or if it's, something, even live. But I think the other piece of that is really the paid piece, and just making sure that if it is something that is is a strategy or has a lot of desire and impact from leadership, for example, to really get a far reach and a lot of eyes on it, then you need to have a strategy that plays into that, and you'll need the paid to be able to hit those numbers and hit that audience with that.
Yeah, it's a pay-to-play world. You need to make sure that organically you have your strong content mix, have a regular, that you're not oversharing. So make sure that I guess I can give a real example that at Hootsuite we just pulled back on our Facebook posts from 5 a day to 3 because we saw that we ran some tests after a little bit. We noticed that our numbers were going down. And so we switched it over to let's try more. No, that didn't work. Let's pull it back. Let's try 3. That's kind of the magic number we've hit right now for optimized for engagements. But you have to make sure that once you have those organic posts out, that we are boosting with additional money to make sure that you're reaching the right people, the people that need to be seeing it.
Yeah.
And we try to boost our top performing posts. Those are the ones that are already doing well.
Right.
Let's put some money behind it and snowball it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think 2 things that come to mind, and one of them was from what Nick just mentioned, is using content-specific features, and then maybe even boosting those as well. If you do a poll on Twitter, it's a lot more engaging than doing hey, pick A, B, or C, or D.
Yeah.
Respond with your letter. You know what I mean? On LinkedIn, there's obviously LinkedIn Live. So leveraging the tools that are already baked into the social platform will help your content stand out a little bit, as long as the content itself is good.
No, I think that's fantastic. And the call out you guys make around paid media is also really important because, we always recommend here at LinkedIn, we're an advertising business. You start with organic content because that allows you to, again, build up that base of people who you're not paying to acquire. That's a really authentic audience that you're reaching. And, that's going to serve as your true north as to, what's resonating the best.
Yeah.
Now in the universe that is pay to play, you can go ahead and actually make really intelligent business decisions based on the content that's performing best organically. You can sponsor that. And the beautiful thing about paid media too is, as social media companies, we are then incentivized to give additional metrics or, share more information as to how your post is performing, what the ROI is. There's a ton of metrics that you can get really granular on that help you inform, how your social is impacting your business, that I think paid media really helps you accomplish. So with that, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
And we would be not inclusive marketers if we were not asking this question. So, I think it's important to call out that we all come from relatively large enterprises that are relatively well-resourced. We can afford softwares and brand campaigns and whatnot. I imagine there's probably a lot of folks on the stream that, may work at smaller companies. They may not necessarily have those resources to be able to hire a whole team to do their social. So, what are some tips for folks that maybe don't have the money to invest in some of the things we've suggested today? Where do you start? How do you kind of kick off?
I think first is like figuring out where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of time invested.
Yeah.
There's only so many hours in the day, so even if you're spending 8 hours on social, how do you want to use it to be most efficient? For example, I know that there's some brands that they're B2C, like for example, like there's one that's a wine company. They don't share any original content at all. They don't invest any spend into original content. But what they do is they use Twitter and like tools like LinkedIn to heavily invest in community management and speak directly to their consumers. And I think that's a really smart way to do it because you're not using any of your time into creating original content, and they're still making sales, which is at the end of the day what they were trying to do.
Yeah, some of the things you can do right now just to be better at social media and to manage it, especially if you're a team of one. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. You can use Hootsuite, right? So you can use Hootsuite to make sure that you schedule all of your posts out for the whole week or month or however long you want to go out. You can also, I always say, make sure that your profiles are optimized and make sure everything's good there, that when people come to your brand's channel, they know who you are, what you're about, and things like that. And then also it comes to the point of curation versus creation, right? So if you don't have the time, you don't have a team of 5 or whatever to create their own content, you don't have blog writers or anything like that, you can still curate content. Yeah, and that I always say it's way easier to click share than it is to write a 3,000-word blog post.
That's very true.
That's actually one of the really interesting features we have via LinkedIn pages. Is this idea? It's called content suggestions. So it will show you based on your audience feature or kind of your audience profile what your audience may be more inclined to share. Another fantastic way to do that is through. I remember when I first joined LinkedIn, I used Google Alerts. It was just me. So similar to SEO, I decided, okay, here are all the keywords that we as an advertising business want to rank for. Let's say, B2B marketing, content marketing, social media marketing, so on and so forth. And that, to your point, Nick, generated articles that I was then able to share. You think about how to engage folks in the B2B space. People want information. They want to look credible. They want to look good at their jobs. They want to do their jobs well. So, finding those third-party articles is just as valuable as creating your own content because you're helping those influencers, those other brands, whatever, elevate their voice. So with that, I think we are going to need to wrap up the episode. It has been such an incredible, insightful chat. Love sharing the stage, the studio set, whatever we're calling this, with all of you. And for those of you watching at home, we've actually compiled a resource kit that talks about a lot of the same stuff we talked about today here in the broadcast. And there's a link for that up on your screen. If you go to lnkd.in, not linkedin.com, lnkd.in /brilliant social brand, you will see a blog post that has sort of our checklist for social media success already built in. Now, I am massive fans of everyone sitting here on this couch, and I followed them. Is vehemently the right word? Excitedly, with bated breath, on LinkedIn. So I would suggest that all of you do the same. They have incredible perspectives on everything from social media to diversity and inclusion. So I would greatly suggest that you check these fine folks out on LinkedIn. So with that, if you're tuning in from Slido, please go ahead and take a minute to take the survey on the right side of your console. We're always looking for feedback on how we're doing, how these episodes are going, suggestions for future episode topics. It's something we're always looking to iterate and optimize on in the spirit of all good marketing. So with that, again, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us here in Sunnyvale in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I want to go ahead and actually roll a message from our sponsors here at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. So thank you so much and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Reminder, present to Tech Buying Committee tomorrow.
Christine! Ernest from L&K Consulting. I hope you're still in the market to upgrade because we have this
looks interesting.
You can be the hero of your data center.
That would be nice.
Your data center should be driving better business outcomes.
Exactly. Just what I've been looking for.
Find the right people, the right way with LinkedIn Marketing Solutions.